Hi, I've got a question for you. If your car is broken, are you going to go to the grocer to get help with it? Probably not, right? What about if you're not sure about the medication you're on? Would you ask a computer scientist to get advice? Not really, yeah? If you needed to fly to the Arctic for some research, would you contact, say, oh, I don't know, an MLM salesperson? No, probably not, unless, of course, that was their business. And would you, if you were hiring somebody to lead a team of scientists and you had a choice between a, um, say, let's see, a lawyer, a priest, or an actual scientist, who would you choose? Probably a scientist, right? So, the reason I ask you these questions is I want you to remember that when you are seeking advice from people, the best people to ask are the people who are the most qualified. Now, there are always going to be exceptions. There are always going to be bad people who take advantage of their position in a field of study to enrich themselves, either by selling things that don't really help, but they say they do, or by shilling for a particular company or industry or political candidate or whatever, or in other ways, making themselves richer and more powerful by doing things that actually hurt the people who are taking the advice. And we see this happening all the time in the financial field and also in the supplements field. Now, the financial field is kind of the Wild West sometimes, especially when you're looking at cryptocurrency and NFTs and other less secure forms of investments. And the and cryptocurrency was never designed to be, or never was intended to be originally, an investment. It was intended to kind of be an alternative to the current forms of currency that are almost entirely fiat currencies, which means that there's, in a sense, a cryptocurrency is a fiat currency. But anyways, I get away from the subject too much, and I'll forget what I'm talking about. the The problem is over the past 10 years, we have seen a huge surge in grifters and con artists and influencers who sell themselves to the highest bidder. They build up huge audiences with their personalities, and then they make you believe that what they're telling you is the truth. Even though in the past they may have warned you, this subject is blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly they're promoting the very thing that they put down. We can see that happening with lots of people, all the way up to President Trump, who used to hate cryptocurrency. He used to say it was stupid. So I want you to think very carefully on this topic. Very, very carefully consider if the sources of your information are people that are actually not just knowledgeable in that area of expertise, but are also doing it for the right reasons. And I'm going to hone in on health because health is something that's been very important to me for most of my life. I started becoming concerned about my health when I was still, I believe, in my early 20s. I had to think about that for a second. It's been so long. And There are various reasons, and some of the reasons are genetic tendencies within my family for heart disease, but also because I had taken to heart messages I'd heard about taking good care of your health, and so I started to, instead of eating out of boxes and cans and bags and stuff like that, I started to figure out how to cook my own meals, and that was my first step. Now, I didn't have all the information back then, and quite frankly, there's never going to be all the information because we're all different. Some of us need to have meat in our diet, some of us don't need to. Some of us need a low fat diet, some of us need a low carb diet. Some of us, most of us really, need kind of a balance. And that balance can come in different ways than what you would think, which most people would think, oh, okay, a balanced diet would be dairy and meat and eggs and seafood and let's see, what else? Um, Fruits, vegetables, including legumes, nuts, and so on and so forth, spices as well. And other people would say, no, you don't actually need to have meat, or you don't have to have meat, dairy, and eggs, or you don't have to have anything from animals on the land. Or, and some of them will say you don't need anything from animals, period. And there is a recent study that's come out that demonstrates that the claims that some amino acids are missing from plants or plant sources are that information is incorrect. But the truth of the matter is there's no one diet that works for everybody. Period. It just doesn't exist. So, and it's hard to talk to doctors about this because doctors don't actually get more than about a day's worth of training, 24 hours of classes on diet and nutrition. Even the doctor that I used to have, who had as a secondary area of interest at university, along with her doctoral or medicine degree, had studied diet and nutrition. It was even hard for her because she, as both a doctor and a wife and mother, didn't have time to keep up with the information. And even just asking her to look into something for me netted zero results. And that's true of many doctors. Many doctors are less informed than she was, and they don't have time. And at some clinics, like Mercy Health, which is part of Bon Secours, they're only paid when they're in front of a patient. The rest of the work that they do is unpaid work, which I think is ridiculous because it just keeps them enslaved much, much longer because they have that huge debt from university they have to pay off, and they're not getting as much as they deserve. So it's really not fair. So getting and getting to see a dietitian is not easy. A lot of insurance companies won't let you see a dietitian except for within a hospital setting, which is crazy because we need proper dietary knowledge, and insurance companies are restricting our access to that. So then we turn to the internet. But most of the common websites that you might go to, or people on YouTube and other places that are providing information about diet and nutrition, you don't know whether you can trust them or not. And just trusting them because they're likable or they're entertaining or anything like that is a big mistake, because a lot of them take advantage of the knowledge that if you like somebody, you're more likely to listen to them, especially if some of the things that they're saying align with what you already believe. You can get fooled. And the best source of information is people who are actually researchers in the field of study that's relevant to what you're interested in, and research studies. And you can access research studies through various sources, such as Google Scholar. The problem is if you don't know how to evaluate a research study to see if it's even valid or has conflicts or has problems of other kinds, you're likely not to get the information you need. It's not easy. I look at research studies and I find it difficult to do that. The language is not standard English by any means. They use a lot of abbreviations that if you don't look into it, you're going to be confused about it. What is P, for example? Well, P, I'm not even going to try to define it for you, but you also have to be able to look at that study and see if perhaps it was financed by an industry that will benefit financially if certain results are discovered or reported. In other words, it could be that the study is false, that it has been made by an industry or company for the very purpose of deceiving the consumers and making them believe their agenda. And that has happened a lot over the past few decades. It has become insane, and our government isn't doing anything about it. If people put up false studies that have been funded by particular industries for the benefit of that industry, they get away with it in America. We have people coming from other countries where they have been stripped of their medical or scientific certifications, and they come here and they act like they did nothing wrong. Like Andrew Wakefield, who lied to the world about the measles vaccine within MMR vaccines in order to make people believe that autism was caused by that, because he and his partner were developing their own measles vaccine and they wanted to be able to market it to everybody. The best way to do that was for him to publish a false study about the relationship between vaccines, or at least the measles vaccine, and autism. He was eventually exposed as having made a false report. It took a long time for the Lancet to retract it for some stupid reason. And he was stripped of his medical degree. He is not a doctor. He is not qualified because of the crime he committed. He left the UK and came to the United States. And ever since then, he has been beating the drum about vaccines. And then there is the guy who founded AG1. He was convicted of fraud in Australia. Now, in Australia, the way it works is a little bit different from America. It goes off your record after a certain number of years. And that's what happened. So he is actually a felon. But it's harder to find that information. Now, the problem is he came here and came out with a supplement that is overpriced and under quality. And it's become huge. Lots and lots of channels on YouTube, for example, have been sponsored by AG1, and it has become a huge supplement, even though it's not regulated. You can't put faith in supplements. They're not regulated. Especially if the person says, this is the number one solution. In fact, it's the only solution that will work for everybody. That is a red flag. Now, I want you to think back to the beginning of this video when I was asking you questions. So, if you had a medical foundation and you needed somebody to run that foundation, what kind of person would you look for to put in charge of it? If it's a medical foundation, would you put in somebody there that had no experience in medicine? Or would you choose somebody with medical experience? Would you consider somebody with a criminal record of fraud or addiction or other related problems, false medical research, for example? Or would you not consider those people? Would you put into that role somebody who had strong ties to the supplements industry or the agriculture industry or the health insurance industry or other industries that have a different agenda than what you might have? Would you choose a lawyer? Would you choose a politician? Or would you go for a scientist or a medical professional who actually would understand what the people who were working for the foundation were doing on a day-to-day basis? Well, if you answered to anything other than a medical professional or a scientist, or you came up with another idea, for example, somebody who has a long history of successfully running businesses of various types without being involved with private equity, for example, or without having this history of optimizing to the point of it becoming painful to work for that company, then that would also be a potentially acceptable choice, because medical professionals and scientists aren't necessarily the best people to run a company, but they can be if you get the right person. Just like somebody who has no experience in medicine and science could be a great choice if they have other experiences and qualifications that make them a perfect match. But what you shouldn't be choosing is somebody who has none of that, because then you're setting your foundation up for failure. You're setting up your foundation for charges of fraud, of medical malpractice, and so on and so forth. So, what is the point of all this? Well, first of all, I need you to understand there are people out there, grifters and con artists, who have made it their business, their profitable business, of manipulating the public into believing things that are not true or are only true for a small subset of people. For example, the people out there that tell you, such as Jordan Peterson's daughter, that everybody should eat a carnivore diet, or Paul Saladino, or any of those other carnivore advocates, that carnivore is the way to go. It's the way what our ancestors ate, and it's what we should eat. It's a lie. Yes, there are some people for whom eating an all-meat diet can be life-saving. But the vast majority of people, the vast majority, cannot survive on a meat-only diet. And Paul Saladino proved that himself. He had to get off of his carnivore diet because his health was getting worse because of it. And there are many, many others who have either had to quit their carnivore diets or they had to die because of their carnivore diets. There's a long list of these people. If you are not from a genetic pool like the Inuit, where meat is the number one food, seal meat, whale meat, fish meat, and so on, bear meat, walrus meat, whatever. If you're not from one of those ethnic groups where meat was the only thing available most of the year, you're not safe to be a carnivore. Because it took many generations for those tribes, those groups of people, for the people who could not tolerate a meat-only diet to die off. So the genetic pool was shrunken to only those people who could survive and thrive on a meat diet or a very meat-heavy diet. So if you're not from one of those groups, you eating a carnivore diet is going to hurt you. Short term or long term, it's going to hurt you. And the same, and then there's the fact that, number one, okay, the claim that our ancestors lived on a meat diet is false. There is ample archaeological and paleontological evidence that demonstrates that our ancestors did not only eat meat, they ate fruits and vegetables and grains and all kinds of stuff other than just meat. Yes, meat was an easy source, but they varied their diet. And if anybody says to you, oh, well, before, say, 1,000 years ago, nobody was eating seed oils, that's a lie. If you look at the Bible, for example, it mentions seed oils. I believe it's sesame. And going back even further than Jesus Christ, there is evidence, there are records of the use of oil for food, for cooking. So this is a totally false narrative that has been spread by people like Nina Teicholz. Or we can look at another factor that even if, let's just assume that these carnivore advocates are right. They're not, but let's just assume, okay? And meat is the best source of food. To say that our ancestors ate A and therefore we must eat A is a false equivalency. It is false logic. Our ancestors lived thousands and thousands of years ago, maybe tens of thousands of years ago, depending on who they're pointing their fingers at. And you'll notice they never get specific about that unless they target a specific group, like the Inuit, which I'm not descended from them. Their diet back then, way back then, is not necessarily appropriate for our diet now. Why? Because over millennia, our digestive systems, our digestive abilities have changed. Just like dogs. Dogs used to be purely carnivore. And now dogs eat carbs and other things in their diet. Cats in the wild are almost entirely carnivore as well. Cats and dogs in the wild rarely eat anything other than meat. But domesticated cats and dogs have been around us for so long that they will eat other foods. Like when I was a kid, we had a cat and it was crazy about corn. So when we were finished with our corn on the cob, we'd put the cob on the floor and our cat would go to town on it. That's not something a wild cat would really do. Now, when I say wildcat, I mean a truly wildcat, not descended from domesticated cats. Their genetics have been altered over a period of millennia. Our genetics have been altered over a period of millennia. So some of the foods that were eaten by ancestors are stuff that we still eat, and some of those foods we might have problems eating. So in some cultures, dairy, until recently, was not something that people would consume. And then, when they get old enough, their body stops producing the lactase, the enzyme that digests dairy. And as a result, they start to get gas and bloating and diarrhea. And in some communities, there have been so many generations of people eating dairy that even into old age, they continue to produce lactase. But at least 60% of the worldwide population are lactose intolerant to one degree or another. I'm very lactose intolerant. Even a very small amount of milk causes me to have gas and bloating and diarrhea. So this idea of looking to our ancestors for guidance on what we should eat, which is called paleo, is a false one. Next, we can talk about keto. Keto is a diet that was developed about 100 or so years ago by specialists helping epileptic sufferers to reduce their seizures. They were put on this special diet. They were medically monitored on a very regular basis throughout the entire time they were on that diet. And what was observed was that during that time period that they were being monitored, and some of them had to be taken off of it because they couldn't tolerate. But those who could tolerate the keto diet, And when I say keto diet, it's very specific as to how much protein, how much fat, and how much carbs you would get. Fat was high, and it wasn't all meat. It was a mixture of different kinds of fats. Protein was average, and carbs were low. That is the true keto diet. And what they observed for those people who didn't medically suffer and could continue the keto diet was that the incidences of seizures were decreased. For those of you who don't know, epilepsy has certain problems that are caused by it, one of which is seizures, where your body and brain don't function normally for a period of time. And there was a follow-up study, I think it was like a decade or two after that, where they contacted the kids who had been put on the keto diet as adults and discovered that even some of them had continued the diet and some of them had not. But even for those who had discontinued the diet after the study was over, they still continued to have fewer seizures than kids who had never had this intervention. And in more recent years, the keto diet has been associated with helping with certain other neurological diseases because it's a neurological problem, a problem with the nerves. So the keto diet was never intended for you to lose weight. It was developed for neurological diseases. Does that mean it won't work for everybody? No, it doesn't. It works for a small group of people. Outside of this neurological diseases problem, a small number of people can long-term be on keto. But studies have shown that the vast majority of people who go on keto have beneficial results for 6 months to 2 years, after which their medical markers that are being tracked start to go in the opposite direction to become worse again. As little as 6 months. So if you're going to use the keto diet, you must be very careful to regularly have your blood markers checked and your urine markers to make sure you're not hurting yourself, that you're not increasing your risk for diabetes, that you're not damaging your kidneys, that you're not increasing your risk for cardiovascular disease, and so on and so forth. Keto doesn't work for the majority of people. And in fact, Virta Health, which made its own version of keto, which is, oh, wow, another version of keto. Wow, that's amazing. They did a study that was funded by industries that would benefit heavily from the results of the study. And they downplayed some of the results in that study to make it look like, yes, their version of keto is great. But if you actually look at the research, not so much. In fact, the 16 months to 2 years that I was talking about came from that study. So to claim that keto will work for everybody is just not true. It won't work for most people. Just like carnivore won't work for most people, paleo won't work for most people, blood type diet will only accidentally work for anybody because the blood type diet is a false diet. The cabbage soup diet is a false diet that is dangerous. Any diet where you're eating one food for a long period of time is a dangerous diet that can kill you, or at the very least malnourish you. The idea should be this: everybody is different. So if you try a diet and you try it for like 2 weeks, you're not going to know anything about that diet in 2 weeks. Most likely. Now, some people will have a strong negative reaction to it, and they'll be like, oh God, I got to stop this. I'm feeling horrible. Now, but that could be a false negative. The reason I say that is because I've seen a lot of people complain about fiber. Fiber is a very important component of a diet, but it is not digested by us. It is digested by bacteria in our guts. And if you have been eating a low fiber diet, or a no fiber diet like carnivore, you do not have enough bacteria to suddenly go to a high fiber diet. It's going to cause you to have gas, and bloating and diarrhea. Yeah, the same symptoms I have with lactose. Because you don't have the agent that can digest it and turn it into something that's not going to make you suffer. So if you go from a low or no fiber diet to a high one or even a medium one, you need to gradually increase the amount of fiber you get. So that is a false negative. But there are people who will, on occasion, have a real negative experience. And in that case, they need to stop quickly. Like if you suddenly start like feeling lots of pain in your chest, especially in the area of the heart, not in the middle, not where the breastbone is, the sternum, but to the left. And it could be very much like right there, right next to the side of the breastbone. It could even sometimes be over here, but mostly it'll be over here. That is a strong sign that you are eating something in that diet that is really dangerous for you. So yesterday I was watching an advertisement from Dr. Luis. It was I forgot his last name. It was a Hispanic last name. And I'm not saying this because of anything that Trump has done about Hispanic people or immigrants or anything like that. I don't have a problem with people of other ethnicities than myself. My son is half Asian. My wife was Indonesian. She was a Javanese woman. Stuff is not important to me. You are who you are. It's not about your ethnicity. Okay? But I immediately became suspicious because the advertisement that Google was showing on YouTube said that this doctor said that genetics don't play a role in cardiovascular disease and salt and sodium don't play a role in cardiovascular disease. And I know right off the bat, because I personally have genetic problems that are related, that cause CVD and cause me to be salt and sodium sensitive. In fact, yesterday I had a salt episode where I had a food for breakfast that I didn't realize had too much sodium in it. And as a consequence, my blood pressure shot up to 150 over 100 and caused me to feel very dizzy for a period of hours until I was able to get it down by drinking lots of water and stuff like that. So I knew right away that this was a big red flag that this doctor potentially was providing false information. So I watched most of the video, which is a really long video, in which he talks about his supplement. He's selling a supplement, Vital BP or something like that, which he claims is the only solution, which is another red flag. When somebody says the only solution and says that genetics and things don't have a role to play, and all the stuff that doctors and scientists are telling us are true, and this person is all by themselves saying, no, it's not true. It's like listening to Dr. Gundry. He says a lot of nonsense. He says some things that are correct for some people, but mostly what he says is only correct for certain people or it's absolute nonsense. So I listened to this guy, and he is saying genetics and salt and sodium are not the causes. And I know that he's lying because I am a living proof that he's lying. He's saying that the doctors and scientists are wrong, that he knows all. He is the one who has cracked the code. Maybe he has, but he's also lying. And when he says his solution is the solution that will cure you, he might be wrong, because it may work for you, it may not. And so he talks about nattokinase, which comes from a Japanese food, fermented soybeans that is called natto, and it basically looks like small soybeans that are in a very thick, viscous, stringy kind of gravy. And it has an interesting flavor. Not my favorite. I can eat it, but it's not my favorite. And he talks about CoQ10, and he talks about a bunch of other things like vitamin K2 and vitamin D3, and so on and so forth. And all these things, and they're all put together in his miracle supplement. So, yes. Maybe it's true. Maybe it'll work for some people. I don't know. But the way he's presenting it screams this is a scam, especially since it's a supplement that is not regulated by the FDA. Now, if he had a medicine that was regulated by the FDA, I would say look into it. When somebody's selling you a supplement, that should set off alarm bells for you. Very, very loud alarm bells. So, going back to the medical foundation, let's say that you've hired your CEO. The person is very qualified, doing a great job, and you have to expand the number of employees you've got because the employees you've got are doing such a great job, but they can't keep up. There's just too much demand. So, are you going to go out and are you going to hire people who only believe what you believe? People who are politically aligned with you, religiously aligned with you, culturally aligned with you, from your ethnic group, from your race? Or are you going to hire a diverse group of people, the meritocratically chosen as the best of the best? The answer should be meritocratic hiring. You should be choosing the people who are the best. Regardless is not a word. Regardless of ethnicity, race, religion, sexual background, any of that stuff, that's all irrelevant. As long as they are willing to do their jobs, and they can do their jobs really well, and they're going to set aside their biases and their personal beliefs and stuff to get to the truth, then you can hire your business. It'll explode because you have high quality people. I mean, if you go to any successful business where they just seem to always, without even doing much in the way of like marketing, or there's not much word of mouth marketing or whatever, where it's kind of like superficial. Oh, this product looks great, so you should buy it. That is not why you choose something unless it's something that is very superficial. Like if you're going to buy medicine, it doesn't matter what color it is or what shape it is. Does it work right? Will it help? So this brings me to the next question. What are RFK Jr.'s qualifications? He's a lawyer. He's a politician. He's also an ex-drug user. He also has been caught lying many, many times. He lied in front of Congress saying that he never said bad things about vaccines when he is on record numerous times putting down vaccines. And he goes back and forth as the head of HHS on vaccines. Sometimes he says bad things about vaccines. Sometimes he says good things about vaccines. He gave bad advice to American Samoa about vaccines, with the consequence that 78 people who didn't get their measles vaccines and died of it. And we had people getting sick and dying here in America because of things that he was saying as well about vaccines. He is a lawyer and a politician. He is not qualified to run the HHS. And there are lots of doctors and scientists who are saying this. He is not qualified to make public policy on health and diet and nutrition. He is very inconsistent. He lies a lot. He is a threat to our country. Dr. Oz used to be an amazing general practitioner. He is not a specialist. He is not a diet expert. He is not a nutritional expert. He has been found to be using illegal drugs for himself, and he has been selling supplements to make himself rich. These are not the kind of people we need in charge of the national health. Heck, I can do a better job than RFK Jr. I don't lie. And I look at the research. And I don't say, oh, all these people, they don't agree with me, so they're fired. That is not how you do science. That is not how you do medicine. RFK is in it for the money. If you look into the foundation that he helped to run, he screwed them over. He made it big, but at the same time, he was screwing over the public. He said a lot of false things, and he continues to say many false things. We cannot have our country survive when the leaders of our country are putting into positions of power people who are totally unqualified and lying to us. This is bad for our country. So I hope that you will join me in condemning RFK Jr. as the head of HHS and getting him out of there and keeping him out of the Senate because he's a quack. Even his own sister says he is a known liar. You cannot trust what he says because he lies so much. Please join me, Dr. Mike Warshawski, and many other doctors and scientists. I'm not a doctor or scientist. I'm just self-taught in condemning him as the secretary of the HHS and getting him removed from any position of authority within our government. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for watching. I need to ask for your help. On December 11th, 2024, Amazon fired me under false pretenses, and the 17th, I had surgery for the injury that occurred at Amazon that Amazon and Sedgwick refused to take responsibility for. So it's coming out of my pocket and my insurance company's pocket. That means I'm unemployed and I will not be getting short-term disability from Amazon or from Sedgwick. So my financial situation is a bit of a problem right now. If you would like to help me, there are some things you can do. Number one, you can like, subscribe, share, comment, and turn on notifications on my channels. Number two, if you'd like to give a one-time donation, and please don't do this if you can't afford it, you can on the Glenn's Fast Reviews channel do a super thanks. Number three, if you would like to help me on a monthly basis, you can become a member on Glenn's Fast Reviews, or you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there. Thank you so much for your support.